All right, everybody, we're live here. This is Tunnel Vision, a little different look than what you normally see. I'm Ryan Abraham, publisher of USCFootball.com, taking over hosting duties tonight for Keely, Eure. Hoping you guys can see us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and, of course, Periscope. We got a big show for you today. We got Chris Trevino sitting over there. Check him out. You can follow him on Twitter at Chris N. Trevino. Welcome, Chris. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing all right. Ready for our Tunnel Vision show. And, of course, Shotgun Spratling over there. Follow him on Twitter at Shotgun SPR. All red today. It's like Tiger Woods on a Sunday. How you doing, Shotgun?
It's like pink, isn't it?
I don't know. It looks red on the. You're colorblind, right?
That is true.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Keely's attending to a family thing, so we want to make sure this is a very interactive show. It's off season, so there's not a ton of stuff going on. So we're going to talk about USC strength and conditioning program. Our Dan Weber had a one-on-one sit-down with USC strength and conditioning coach Aaron Ausmus, who's been around the program a couple of times, and it's changing the look of USC strength and conditioning programs. We're going to talk about that a little bit of transfer portal news. We're going to talk about Chris Trevino's doing a analysis of USC's linemen, some of the one-on-ones. So we'll talk about that, but mostly we want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. So if you'd like to call into the show, you can see the number right down there on the bottom of your screen, 1-512-4TUNNEL. We love to get live calls, so make sure you do that. You can tweet us. Use the hashtag TunnelVision. You can see that on the little thing below us, too. We'll point that down there. I'm not getting the camera right. Try to make a short tweet, otherwise it kind of looks all weird. Chris is putting bunny ears over Shotgun Spratling. And, of course, all of our comments on Periscope, on YouTube, and Facebook. I'm usually monitoring Periscope, but I can't really do that because I'm hosting the show now. So we might not get to your Periscope questions unless one of those guys want to take a look at it. But otherwise, yeah, I'll have YouTube questions up here. I have the Facebook questions up here. So we'll be able to do all of that here on the show tonight. Well, guys, again, welcome. And thanks for coming in, Chris, making the drive up from the LBC. What are your overall thoughts from hearing from Aaron Ausmus, really for the first time for us?
Let you start. Go for it, Chris.
There were some good little nuggets in Dan's piece. If you haven't read it yet, I would go check that out. There was he had some cool lines just about how, a parrot or about buying in. Like anyone can say, I'm buying into the program. You could buy a parrot and you can have him say that, but it's really going to tell if you're buying it is on the scales. And I think that kind of echoed what Coach K was saying in the spring about how he wants to see results on the scale. So I like that's kind of feeding into the program a little more, just getting bigger and that kind of stuff.
I mean, the thing that stood out to me is the T-shirt order. He talked about how many large T-shirts that they ordered last year. I think the number was it 63 was the number out of 105 players wore T-shirts that were size large last year. And he was like 63. Why is it 63? That's more than half your players are wearing size large. He's like, we're supposed to be football players. These guys should be in extra large shirts or double XLs because their shoulders are so big and everything else. So he wants to get that number down to 12. So he wants to, divide by more than, less than 20% of what they had last year. So I think that is something that stood out, the fact that he wants the guys to be bigger. It's not, hey, let's get better as far as let's get positionally stronger. We'll get stronger for offensive linemen and their lifts and stuff, and exploding off the ball. The wide receivers, let's get faster and stuff. No, he wants guys bigger and stronger. And that's something you haven't really seen from this USC program, basically since he left. The focus hasn't been the same with Ivan Lewis as it has with Aaron Ausmus before when he was here. So we'll see how that translates on the field. You have seen the teams the last couple of years, and the question has been their physicality and their toughness in the trenches. So if you're bringing back and guys are bigger and stronger, usually that leads to targeting the strength in the trenches and being tougher. When you're stronger and you push other guys around, then you look a lot tougher than if you're the weak guy getting pushed around.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too, with the number of large T-shirts or whatever that you're ordering. And I know shirt sizes are weird. People I see guys that are big and they try to wear a medium T-shirt and stuff like that. But I guess, if you're a football team, you want a whole bunch of double XLs and 3XLs. And seeing a guy like Brett Nealon saying, hey, I got up to 300 pounds, as someone that's been I've tried to lose weight recently, and it's like, oh, I'm trying to get to a certain weight. You're talking about an offensive lineman like trying to get up to 300 pounds, but they all have goals. They've got goals of players that want to lose some weight, goals of players that want to gain some weight. But if you're on a football team, yeah, I see his point where you don't want a whole bunch of large, certainly no medium T-shirts out there. But I guess that's an interesting way to look at it. Sometimes you're like, how many guys can bench press 400 pounds and things like that? How many guys do you have wearing large T-shirts? That's pretty cool.
And I think that you want to have more guys that are the first guy off the bus type people. And I don't think that's been the case necessarily. The guys that have been the first person off the bus have been guys that have been injured too, with Oluwale Batiku and Port Augustin. And my question is, did Port Augustin even get a T-shirt? Or is he like, just make sure there's no sleeves and, make sure there's no midriff and then maybe I'll wear it?
He got a crop top.
Yeah, I think he probably got a crop top. So just looking at it and just the things they're focusing on there, it seems like they want to get stronger, more physical than they had been previously. And, he talked to Dan wrote that, basically all the guys are doing the same thing. The quarterbacks and receivers are working out with the same type of things because he said that, stronger hands are better for everybody, that type of thing. So I think that the specialization is not the same as it was previously. So we'll see how that translates necessarily too. And the thing you always have to worry about is, do certain positions start getting injured, and it's similar injuries type of thing. That's always a concern when everyone's doing the same lifts type of thing. But I think maybe you start with the base and everyone does all the stuff, and then as you get closer to the season, maybe change that up a little bit. We'll see how they look during the summer. We'll see how many bodies you can visibly notice that there's a difference, and then we'll see in the fall how it translates on the field.
Chris, did you see some of the guys that you've seen before? Did you see any kind of difference in their bodies as far as like guys putting on weight, gaining weight? Anyone sort of stand out to you? I know Drake Jackson. I mean, we can put up a picture of him. He's someone that said I think Clay Helton said he gained 20 pounds. I don't think it ended up being that. He gained up like 10, but it seemed like there were some definite body transformations, a different focus from what they were doing in the offseason.
Yeah, for me, I think I definitely noticed it more on the offensive line. I know we just kind of talked about Brett Nealon, getting over that 300-pound mark. But just some people that I talked to about the line last year kind of insisted that, under Callaway, he wanted his linemen under 300 pounds. He wanted them to be, they didn't want to touch that mark. They had a specific weight to stay under 300. And, when Drevno took over, it was, all right, you guys can get over 300. I want everyone over 300. So I think that meshes well with what Ausmus is bringing in right now. And I definitely saw some guys that were big. Nealon was a little bit bigger. Justin Dedich was bigger. I thought Austin Jackson looked a little bit thicker up top. So I definitely noticed some, an extra layer for the offensive linemen this spring.
Okay. Guess what? We got our first live caller. It's very nice. Like I said, 1-512 tunnel is our call line, the call-in line. If you guys still use your phone for that, I know you text and check your emails and stuff, look at websites, but you can actually use your phone to make phone calls. If you want to do that, you can call in. Looks like we got the Cattleman on from Tennessee. Let me pull him up here. Is this the Cattleman?
Hey, Ryan, Bill King love for you. How you been?
Good. I'm doing all right. I haven't done a Bill show for a while. I just did an Alabama radio show this morning. That's kind of your neck of the woods. It's a Birmingham show, but
yeah.
Well,
don't listen to that lie bomb joker. If he's trying to bring you on his show, he's probably going to hoodoo you.
I did Five Bomb like back when Lane Kiffin got hired by Tennessee. So because I was covering him, Five Bomb had me on. But that was before. I mean, he was big, but not like freaking huge like he is now.
Well, he's still big, but he's a scumbag. So watch him if he brings you on your show.
All right.
Hey, Ryan, here we go, Ryan. Everything's cool. I want to talk about Aaron Ausmus with you. Stay on topic, and maybe a quick question about Orgeron and Kiffin. Remember those guys?
I remember them. Yes.
Okay. Aaron Ausmus, Ryan. People don't know. I'm sure you know that the strength coach is probably the most important guy on your staff. He's with these players probably more than anybody, including the head coach. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. They spend so much more time with them. I mean, that's really where the players go. And one of the interesting things from the article is like he might get them 2.5 hours a day, but that's 2.5 hours. What are they doing the other 21.5 hours is one of the things he was talking about in the article. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go on.
When was Ausmus first hired at USC? Was he on the Pete Carroll staff?
He was indeed.
Yeah,
He started there. He came back with Orgeron or came back pre-Sark, and then when Sark came in, he brought in Ivan Lewis with him, and then so he came in with Kiffin actually.
Yeah, he was with Kiff for the head strength coach with Kiffin when they won 10 games. But then Sark came in and brought in his guy Ivan Lewis. But he was under Chris Carlisle in like 2002, 2003, I believe, for Pete Carroll.
And Kiffin's short tenure at Tennessee, he hired Ausmus at Tennessee also.
He did, yeah, and he also worked with Orgeron, I believe, at Ole Miss, and Nick Holt at Idaho. So like a lot of USC ties for him.
Okay, just getting a little background there, but just 2 quick questions. I'll get anyway. Love the show, of course. First off, I'm a big Kiffin fan, if you remember from my previous calls, but I want to ask about Orgeron first. He had a pretty nice year at LSU. What do y'all think about Orgeron? What do you think about him? You think he's a long-term solution, or you think it's a one-hit wonder?
It's interesting. I mean, I'll give my thoughts and get your guys' thoughts too. I mean, I like him a lot. I know there's some USC fans that don't. We've gotten a big Twitter argument right before the show. Actually, we were getting ready for the show with our friends at Rain of Troy, people talking about would USC have been better off hiring Orgeron at the time? To me, that's like a no-brainer. Like the 100% USC would have been better off keeping Orgeron, and because not only did you hire Sark, who could have been fired by Washington at any time, you allowed Chris Peterson to go from Boise to Washington. It was just a double whammy. We don't want to get into all that, but yeah. And he had some really good wins last year. I mean, there was a tough 7 overtime loss to Texas A&M, but a couple of top 10 wins, 3 of them, I believe. So I think long term, I mean, that's a really tough place to play. You got to play Alabama every year and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like he's doing a pretty good job down there. Everyone's going to focus on what he did at Ole Miss, but I feel like he's got better as a head coach. And we don't know. I mean, he might fizzle out there, or he might make a run at a national title. But I still think it's a good hire. He motivates players. I think he's hired some really good assistants, and I don't know. What do you guys think?
He's obviously done so much better his second time around than the Ole Miss, and he said he learned so much from that experience. Yeah. The things that he failed at, that he decided that, hey, I learned from those mistakes and I'm doing better. And I think that shows you that he's a guy that can progress in his career. He's a guy that continues to learn new things. They're recruiting at a really high level right now at LSU. They've got a couple of kids from the Southland, with Elias Ricks, the number 1 cornerback. You got Jordan Berry, and I'm forgetting somebody who just committed. Jermaine Burton, wide receiver, who's a top 5 wide receiver in the country as well. All those guys are coming from Southern California. He is made LSU a national recruiting base again, and they were number 1 when they got Burton. I think they bumped down to 2 or 3 now because Alabama and Clemson, those teams that were in the national championship, are doing really well in recruiting as well. But that's where he knows that's where the lifeblood of a program starts with recruiting. He was always a great recruiter at USC, and I think that he continues to learn and evolve as a head coach, and I think that's only going to continue to get better for him. Now, I don't know if he's a national championship coach. That's the question. I don't know if he's at that state, but can he get there? Maybe. I think he's done a really good job of hiring assistants, like you talked about with Dave Aranda, bringing him in as the highest paid defense coordinator, finding guys that that can help build the program around him rather than relying on just himself.
Any thoughts, Chris?
All right, Ryan, last question.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Okay. I've heard you say, Ryan, that you felt when the last hire was get somebody outside of the Pete Carroll tree, something new, no more legacy people, that sort of thing.
Yep.
Seems to me like Aaron Ausmus is a legacy dude.
100%.
I would think. Wasn't your phrase something like somebody who doesn't know Traveler or something like that?
Doesn't know the fight song is my yes.
Yeah,
it's a very familiar hire.
I would say Aaron Ausmus knows the fight song. But here's my last question for you. Love you guys. Oh, and 2-part question. First off, what about that ukulele dude that just committed to Clemson, whatever his name is? I'd like to be in there that y'all running the air raid now with the Cliff Kingsbury wannabe or whatever he is, the body double. It's Hollywood. But Ryan, last question. Kiffin had a bad beat at FAU last year. Like a freshman kicker hit a 60-yard field goal on him. He got beat on an overtime play. What do you think about? I'm a huge Kiffin fan. Perhaps you remember my calls. What do you think about my boy Kiffin going into year 3? Love you guys.
All right, thanks. Cool. All right, so let's see. Well, first, let me pull up. I think we have a DJ. Oh, that thing just crashed.
DJ Uiagalelei.
Yeah,
Ukulele.
ukulele.
Yeah, that was the way everyone pronounced his name originally because they weren't sure how to pronounce it. They just called him Ukulele. DJ Uiagalelei, is that correct? I believe that is correct.
I'm not going to butcher it on it.
So he just committed to Clemson. Obviously, USC has a 5-star commitment from Bryce Young, who's the, if you want to call him the number 2 quarterback, the number 1 dual threat quarterback. DJ is the number 1 pocket passer, pro style quarterback. So getting either one of those guys is a huge boost to your program. But you're not going to get both of them. That was people were tweeting at me and stuff after he committed. I wrote a story. I talked to him after he committed. He talked about the values, the Christian values that Dabo Swinney has and the coaching staff. That played a big role into it. And some people are asking, well, why is USC not in his top 3 at the end? Well, because they had 5-star quarterback Bryce Young already committed. You're not getting 2 5-star quarterbacks in the same class. It's just not happening. It has not happened for any Southern California quarterbacks. When there were Aaron Corp and Jimmy Clausen were in the same class, not happening. When USC got Matt Barkley, you didn't see Pete Carroll going out and getting David Carr from Bakersfield, or there was another quarterback who's in the NFL. I can't remember off the top of my head. You're not getting those guys in the same class. Guys know that there's an alpha dog quarterback. When that guy comes in, it's pretty obvious. It's not like the Ricky Town situation, because I know people want to bring that up too, because Ricky Town's stock was declining as he got to USC, whereas Sam Darnold was coming in, and Sam Darnold's prospects were going up as he got to USC because people got to see him more, and because he was injured all of his junior year, I believe, and wasn't able to play. So, I think that the fact that USC was able to get Bryce Young is huge. The fact that they missed out on DJ is not that big of a deal comparatively, since they do have a 5-star quarterback as well. You know Bosco really well. How was kind of your outlook on DJ's recruitment at Bosco, and how USC kind of fit into that picture?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his recruiting page right now, you'll see there's one crystal ball for USC, and that's my crystal ball that I put in years ago, and I was too stubborn and didn't want to change it. But it should be said that DJ was a huge USC fan growing up. I heard a story that his freshman year, when he went to the guidance counselor, he told him, I want to go to USC. That's where I want to be. Obviously, things have changed. He's obviously committed to Clemson. He's happy there. Bryce is happy at USC. I feel like these 2 kids, though, will always be tied to each other and sort of how we compare them as their careers go. And, USC was where I think he was going to go, 3 years ago. He was always on campus. Family, the Polynesian connection, being a Polynesian quarterback at USC would have been huge for him. But Clemson really made a push starting, 2 years ago, and kind of USC was kind of transitioning to Bryce. And I think the big question that made the switch was, the baseball equation. And I want to ask you, what do you think about DJ as a baseball prospect, and will he play college football the next level?
So I think he's definitely going to play college football because he was injured this year. He's not going to play his senior year of baseball because he's going to be an early enrollee. So he was injured this year and did not play last year baseball.
Freak accident.
I didn't even hear what the injury was exactly.
He cut. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to get it wrong, but he cut something in his hand, his non-throwing hand, when he was in those metal cabinets in your bathroom. Like, the glass broke and it cut his hand. It was like a freak accident. That's how we described it when I saw him. But he looks better now. I saw him a couple months ago. He looks fine now. But.
So that cut short or limited his time on the baseball field. So scouts didn't get to see him as often. I did hear he was up to 95. I did not see it personally. I didn't get to see Bosco this year. I wasn't sure when he was going to be back, type of thing. But I had scouts, since I cover college baseball, I had scouts tell me they were going to go watch him. They were going to do their due diligence, go see him. But the fact that he didn't get to throw that much this spring, I don't think that he's going to be drafted anywhere high enough to where he will, that'll be a difficult decision. He's going to go to Clemson. He told me he's going to try to play baseball at Clemson as well. He said he's talked to Monty Lee, the Clemson baseball coach, and had a sit down with him and said, hey, I want to play. And coach said, yeah, we'll make it work. The question will be, when can he get out to the baseball field? So I think he could easily follow a Jameis Winston style, because Jameis Winston was also a pitcher for Florida State. Was their closer for 2 years. He didn't. His junior year, he decided not to play because of how well his football prospects were going. But I think I could see something similar with DJ. Now, I don't know how good his stuff is outside the fact that he can throw hard. A lot of guys can throw hard, though. What can you do? What's your off-speed? To whether he'll be a contributor as far as baseball. But I think that shows you, how dynamic of an athlete it is. And, if he wasn't hurt this year, and he gets in the rotation with Bosco, and he's throwing really well. Suddenly his baseball prospects may have increased, and then the question becomes, hey, will he make it to campus? At Clemson, or if USC was recruiting him. So I think the fact that you could get Bryce Young and you got that commitment early, that tells you go get that. You don't say, well, let's wait and see. We really like this other guy. He's bigger, he's more physical, got a great arm. Obviously, DJ does, and he might fit better in whatever style offense we're running. Well, now you have the spread offense. The spread offense has been run best with mobile quarterbacks that can make things happen after, if a play breaks down or anything, with Baker Mayfield and, Johnny Manziel and the guys that Cliff Kingsbury had. Patrick Mahomes to an extent as well, even though he's not a super elusive guy, but he makes guys miss in the pocket. So I think that Bryce could fit into this offense with Graham Harrell and make it, just take it to another level potentially. But we'll see how it works out. And I think this shows you, and Ryan, I think you could comment on this too, Clemson had not signed a player from the state of California since 1991 until December. They signed Joseph Nada, the receiver from Folsom, because they don't come across the country to get players because they were a regional-based team. But what happens when you start winning national championships? Suddenly you can go cherry pick away. So it's like USC saying, USC hasn't signed a player from, I don't know, New Jersey or something since Brian Cushing. I think they've had Anthony Sarro since then. But you're not going across the country and pulling these big-time players out of states unless you are a national program, unless you are winning. And USC hasn't won, so that's why they're not going and getting a bunch of guys from Florida or going and getting Georgia guys like they were with Chuma and guys before that. I think that shows you the difference of being really good and being a national contender versus being a blue blood program.
Yeah, I think it's a whole Pac-12 issue, but when USC is not doing that, I really feel like if you remember the 90s, the best players from like De La Salle and the big Southern California high schools were going to Miami and Florida State and Florida. They were going out of state. It was cool to leave the state of California. Pete Carroll put a wall around that and said, no, these players are staying home. And I think that helped the entire Pac-12. With USC being down now, I feel like now a lot of these blue blood programs are coming in and taking players from Southern California. And you see LSU doing it, Alabama doing it, now Clemson doing it. It's a big deal. And we got a question on Facebook from OJ. With DJ Ugalele going to Clemson, do you think Oregon will go big on trying to get Bryce Young to change his commitment to USC?
So I was going to point this out. This is kind of like an example of what the situation USC could have been if they didn't take Bryce when they had the chance to, or if they had waited and trying to, wait it out for DJ or see what he was going to do. Oregon kind of went all in for DJ. I mean, they wanted him bad. Obviously, a lot of schools wanted him bad, but it came down to essentially Oregon and Clemson, and the signs were kind of on the wall that Clemson's the leader, they're the heavy favorite, and Oregon's probably going to be runner-up in this one. So now what you can see is that Oregon is trying to look around. Now they're focusing on Bryce. Now they're like, all right, who
immediately shifted. DJ commits, and it's like their first phone call was to Bryce Young, it seemed like.
It's like you want to ask this girl to prom, and then she says, no, I'm going with the star quarterback of the Star Dragon. Now you got to go to the other girl who was, in the class or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of the situation. I see it in Oregon's definitely making a push for Bryce right now as we speak.
And I think for USC, I mean, even with a 5-star quarterback committed, it's sort of going to be a wait-and-see recruiting class because it's a tough start to the season. If you start winning games, you're going to be in on a lot of bigger prospects. If not, it's going to be more like a defensive recruiting sort of thing, like who really wants to be a USC Trojan. But I think you're kind of teetering on the edge now. It's not good for the entire Pac-12 if the rest of the country feels it's like sharks just smelling blood in the water and coming in, hey, we can come pick the best players out of California and the West Coast because there's no Alabama sitting there making sure guys are going to stay home, and that's really been USC's job. Oregon's done a really good job recruiting, but they're not going to be able to do stuff like that like USC can do. Any 5-star in the area, they can just kind of keep them home when they're doing well. So we'll see how that goes.
And also, it kind of shows you. You looked at. The tide raises all ships, a high tide rises all ships. When USC was doing really well and they go and pull guys from Florida or Georgia, East Coast guys, and they bring them in, then that means they're not taking more California guys. So that gives other Pac-12 programs a chance to come, Washington, the Washington States, the Oregon States, to come into California and get a guy that, maybe they would only get a 3-star, maybe they get a fringe 4-star guy. Well, USC not being able to go outside the region is making it more difficult for the Pac-12 as a whole because Washington's not doing that. Washington has one commit the last 4 cycles from someone outside of the West, and that commit was Jackson Sermon, whose dad was on the staff. So that they're not going out and pulling guys from the East Coast. So they're doing really well recruiting the West Coast. Now, give them credit for that. Oregon is doing really well recruiting the West Coast too, but under Mark Helfrich, they went out and got some guys that just didn't make sense that they were getting. They were getting 3-star guys from Texas or 3-star guys from from these outer states. That's not who you want to go out and get. If you're going to get a 3-star guy, just stick with your backyard guys because then they have a better chance of sticking on campus. They have a better chance of if they're not playing early, they'll still be able to stick around. But you go out and get the 5-star guys. If you're going across the country, what was the famous Ed Orgeron saying? I think it was Ed Orgeron. But if you're going across the country, then they should be a
first-round draft pick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're going to get Leonard Williams. You don't go to get Jamel Cook.
Yeah. Well, he was a 4-star. I mean, he was a pretty big,
He's not going to be a first-round pick, though.
No. We did have this is a YouTube question from SNS Product, whatever. So he says, question, even if USC has a 10-win season, do you think recruits will still be hesitant to come to USC? Kind of like the Lane Kiffin days. Has Clay Helton ruined himself with recruits? What do you guys think?
When were recruits hesitant to come to Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, he recruited well.
I mean, until they went 7-6 and, the writing on the wall was, I don't know what's going on here. Then he lost some big-name guys, but they still had a really strong recruiting class that year. They just didn't have a ton of numbers in it. Maybe that's what they were referencing. Maybe it'll be, guys will be hesitant, but the guys that were hesitant were the out-of-state guys, the Jalen Ramseys and those type that they were trying to bring in. So I think that USC is going to recruit well if they put in the effort. Let's say that if they put in the effort, because last year's
You're saying there
class,
wasn't a lot of effort before?
I don't think they adjusted well to the early signing period. And I think they've done much better the last 6 months or so. So I think they'll be fine as far as recruiting, whether Clay Helton is the head coach or not. But stability definitely helps your recruitment, and winning obviously helps your recruitment.
Yeah. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, 10 wins. I think you're sitting pretty coming off a 5-7 season, and you have a pretty. I think that's a top 25 class at the least if you get 10 wins. Easy.
I mean, they had a top 20 class that was not very good. Like their worst class ever was number 21 or something. What was it last year? Was it 20 or
21 or 22? I thought is where they finished.
And that was like the worst we've ever seen. So yes, I think that was a 5-win season. You already got a 5-star quarterback. But I think you need to get back to USC wins by having a lot of talent. Not necessarily like the best scheming on stuff all the time. For USC to be good, they need the top 5 classes, and I think a 10-win season you could still get something, a top 10 class for sure, maybe a top 5. The problem is if you win like 8 games or you start off like 3-3, I just think it might derail some of the recruiting class, and you might see more of the blue blood programs from outside of the region coming in and plucking guys away that would normally have gone to USC. So there's a lot of things that aren't trending in a great direction, like with the Pac-12 and revenue and all that stuff. And the recruiting stuff isn't really trending in the right direction. I think this is a critical early, September, October, I think are going to be critical for USC, because if you don't get off to a good start, it's not just going to be the record and your head coach is going to be even, on a hot seat. But I think recruiting could really suffer as well. I think this is going to be a critical stretch to start the season.
Yeah, and there was a question on here, which I think we kind of answered, but why is there such a mass exodus of elite Southern California prospects?
Oh, yeah.
So there has been some big-name guys. USD is still in contention for some of those guys. There's also some big-name guys that have not committed yet, one of them being Justin Flo, the inside linebacker, who I think is the best linebacker I've seen in high school. So, Chris, why don't you update them on that, because they're asking, is USC even the mix for Flo, or are they, they have a legit shot for him?
I mean, USC is firmly right there in the mix with Baby Man, as they like to call him.
Yeah, that's his nickname, Baby Man.
Right now he's doing some of his national visits, which USC fans are kind of trembling about that as he goes out of state. But Flo loves USC. He's a SoCal kid. I mean, he wants probably more than anything to stay home and play and put on the Cardinal and gold. And, the crystal ball still sits pretty for USC right now. So they are firmly in the mix. They're recruiting him hard. And, the thing for them is they just got to keep getting him on campus. Every time he gets back, get him on campus again. And, we saw him a couple times up in the spring. And whenever he steps on foot on campus, someone's right there by him. They make a beeline to him. They show him all the love. So they're doing a really good job with Justin Flo. But it's just about keeping pace with some of those national programs that are trying to pull him out of California.
And the big thing is if they win. If they go 5-7 again, there's no way they're getting him. There's just too much attention from outside. Why would you come to a program with back-to-back 5-7 seasons when you would have to be a triple legacy if you're making that move as a 5-star kid like that, a top 5 player. Top 5 players don't go to bad programs. So USC has to win some. So that's the big key for them. They win some, they're right back in the mix for those guys. But if they start out slow, or if you start out 2-4, you're struggling to get those type of players. But also you would have to have a new head coach that would spark interest, and someone thinks, okay, well, things are being turned around. So I think that they just have to win on the field, and suddenly the recruits start coming back around, because USC just has tons of advantages as far as recruiting, and it's a great place that kids want to play at. There's kids that are from Georgia, they're from Texas that say, I want to visit USC. I want to check out what LA's like. And then when you get them on campus and you're winning, suddenly you get some of those kids that want to stick around and want to stay. And that's just been the thing that USC wasn't able to do last year, is because when you go 5-7, there's a lot of question marks, and the Jackson Carmens and stuff are not coming when the team doesn't look like it's headed in the right direction.
We have a live caller, but I want to do one topic real quick. I just put up a tweet, a comment from the last style bender. With all those top 5 classes, in my opinion, SC was one of the few schools that could have dealt with a down recruiting class 2019, but they got to have a legit 2020 class. I agree with that. But the other topic is the transfer portal. We talked about at the beginning. And so last week we talked about Drew Richmond transferring in. Now there's another player transferring out. So this happened pretty quickly. He went into the transfer portal. I'm trying to pull up the tweet here. Yeah, so One Blue Love 23. Matt Fink left? Yes, he did. He entered the transfer portal, and he's on his way to Illinois, along with Trayvon Sidney and Olawale Batiku. So I did an Illinois radio show this week, and they asked a lot of questions about Matt Fink. And I think, the Matt Fink, they need wide receivers. Illinois is not very good. Lovie Smith left a lot of spots open to get transfers. He ended up getting 3 of them from USC. But I want to get your thoughts before. Sorry, we'll get to the live caller in a minute. But wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Matt Fink transferring to Illinois.
I think it's a good spot for him. I think he has an opportunity to go in and compete for the starting position, and it's not like competing at USC where there's a clear front runner and he's on the back burner. I think he's going to go in and he'll have a shot. Now, that's all you can ask for as a quarterback, and a guy that's coming in as a graduate transfer. He'll go in. He's got some familiarity with Trayvon Sidney. That'll definitely help a little bit. At least having one receiver, exactly what they're going to do. So I think he's got a good chance of going in there. They're probably the guy that was I think it was their oldest guy on the roster, the oldest quarterback, and the one that was kind of the incumbent of the group, expected to get the job. He's transferring out too. So they've got a couple of redshirt freshmen and a incoming freshman, I believe, is how their roster shakes out. But I think Fink has an opportunity to go in there and compete, and I think that's all he was looking for, and that's what he's going to get.
Yeah, kind of echoes what you guys were talking about last week with Drew Richmond. Sometimes you just need a fresh start. Sometimes you just need a change of scenery, and I think Illinois is a perfect place for him. He's got some familiarity with those guys that are coming in from USC with him, so I think he'll have a fair shot, and he's got some games, so we'll see. I'll be looking forward to seeing how he does out there.
They're going to run, I believe, more of a zone read kind of thing, which, he did really well with that kind of stuff. I think that having the threat to run is a big deal. And, USC's offense, when he was in it, was more of a hero ball, and that just really wasn't his game. There'll be a lot of short passes, some quick slants, things like that. He can, get out of the pocket a little bit and throw the ball on the run. I think the system's going to work pretty well for him, so we'll see how that works out. But we got Kevin in Palm Springs. Sorry, Kevin, to keep you waiting. What is up, Kevin?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Guys, first of all, thank you for doing this show or this, stream here. think a lot of USC fans can agree that, you guys help us keep our sanity, especially during the off season. So thank you for that, first of all.
You're very welcome.
My question is, and I know you guys have addressed this many times in the past, and we're talking about recruiting tonight, and as far as rankings and this and that, and I'm sure everyone can agree last season was a total disaster naturally. So my question is, because of Helton's just persona, his aura, his coaching style, even with the small changes that we've made in the offseason with the coaching staff, because originally he was supposed to clean house like Notre Dame, which he didn't. Do you folks think that he can honestly lead us to, without a Sam Darnold and a Juju Smith and a Dory Jackson, can he actually lead us to the next level? Because if you watch some of the games last season, mainly in particular like the Arizona game, when you see the kids or the athletes on the sidelines, they just weren't energized. They looked like they were lined up to go to class or something. I mean, it's just the energy and the attitude. I think the winning attitude and the energy just isn't there. And I attribute that a lot to the leadership, which, starts from Helton. Regardless of, the offensive coordinator or the strength and conditioning coach that we've got, do you really think that Helton can actually do it?
That's an interesting question. I think you mentioned, but you thought it said besides the new coordinator, besides the strength and conditioning. I think the strength and conditioning coach with Aaron Ausmus, I think that plays into the sideline demeanor. Your strength and conditioning coach is usually either your get back coach, or the guy that's pumping guys up on the sidelines. Those guys are down there because they don't have any specific requirements during the game. The coach gives them tasks like, hey, make sure to keep the team back and the get back coach and all that type of stuff. But like Thump Belton was the only guy on that, the only assistant on that staff that was really like always energetic on the sidelines. The rest of the strength and conditioning coach was pretty laid back, and I think that plays into the sideline, kind of intensity that you have. So I think possibly with Aaron Ausmus and the staff he's brought in, you might see a little bit different. At least walking around, trying to pump guys up and stuff a little bit more. I think that you'll see a little bit more of that, and it's a really good question. Can Clay Helton motivate 105 guys? I think that's really what this question boils down to, and it's a hard task. You got 105 guys to get them all going in the same direction. That's the hard part. And when you're losing, when you're not playing great, it makes it seems like everyone wants to scatter and go in different directions. But if you start winning, I think that helps guide everybody in. It's kind of like barriers just leading you towards the kind of the finish line there. I think that if they start winning early in the season, they start off strong, I think they'll have a much better chance of doing that. If not, then that's when you probably need to make a change. Because if you can't get people going in the right direction, I think that's where the issues are.
And Shotgun, you bring it. That's a great point. And I agree with that. But it's not just the sidelines. For example, win or lose, during the post game conference or whatever the meeting, and everybody heard him. If you watch his videos, he spent half the time commending the other team for destroying us on the field, and then the other half telling us how proud he is of our team getting humiliated on the field. I just. Do you really, even with motivation on the sideline, do you think his persona can do it? Just his coaching ability or his coaching aptitude is, I guess, my my real question.
So Kevin, you're not a big Clay Helton fan, is what we're. I'm gonna. Without you telling me, I'm just gonna
honestly,
guess.
It's not that. It's just I just don't think he has it in him. He just doesn't have the drive in him. I mean, you don't have to be a yeller and screamer on the sideline, and you don't have to, everyone has their own personalities. Dabo and Nick Saban, they all have their own personalities. But I'm just wondering, because you guys are around him a lot more than we are, of course. But do you think he just has that inside oomph to push the team forward? Is all I'm, asking, deep down inside. But
Chris, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't really know at this point. I mean, for me, I thought in the spring he was trying to pull out a little more oomph when he was talking to the team. There were some moments where there was like, oh, that's a little bit of a new thing for Clay Helton. But I don't know. I'm not going to see what I want to. I won't know until I see, during that first stretch of games where USC is going to get punched in the mouth at some point, and I want to see how they respond to that because, there's a lot of times during the season where they got punched in the mouth and they just kind of collapse like a card house or whatever. But so I want to see how a team reacts.
Card house.
Yeah, that's not my best one. But I want to see how this team reacts to some adversity, unlike they didn't handle it well last year.
I think part of that is the offense just struggling to move the ball ever at times. When you get up 34 straight points, 35 straight points, that's not just the defense. You get a field goal in there that stops the streak, in case you were wondering. So they weren't able to move the ball. And I think with a little bit more consistency and with the offense having some, the big play ability, but also just the ability to move the ball a little bit more consistently, even if it's not, a scoring drive, but getting 2 first downs, giving the defense a little bit of rest, I think that will help the team too. I think that there were times last year where the defense was just on the field all the time, and it's easy to get beat down then, especially as a defense when we can't get off the field and the offense is going to help us, and you're on the offensive side and you're watching it, you're the offensive lineman, you kind of get demoralized by watching the fact that it's 3 and out and you're not on the field very much. I think that those things will be helped by the offense. It's a small thing, but I think it's a big thing at the same time because it just gives the morale changes. And again, 18 to 22-year-olds are up and down with their emotions. So if you get them pushed in the right direction, which is why in college football you'll see 30-point comebacks and stuff. Because you're down, something good happens, and suddenly you build on it, and the emotions on the sideline completely change, and the positive on one side and the negative on the other side. So I think that if they are more consistent on the offensive side, it'll help the defense and it'll help the morale at the same time.
Yeah, Kevin, obviously you're not a huge fan of Clay Helton, but you have to look. He has done some good things, and I think any coach is capable of growing and getting better. We talked about Eddie Orgeron doing that. I think Clay Helton can too. The thing you have to do is, though, if you have to change the way you do things, you have to make different decisions. If you're going to keep making the same decisions, you're not going to grow as a coach or in any kind of profession. If you're going to do the same thing over again, this is why I feel it's right and it's not working, but you're still too stubborn. And there's coaches that do that and they will never change. And if they're good, then that's fine because they're already good. If they're trying to get better, you're not going to really get any better if you're making the same decisions over and over again. We've seen a reverse. I feel like Clay Helton's kind of like a stick-to-his-guns sort of guy most of the time. We saw a lot of changes in this offseason. Now, some of it's you go 5-7, you got to change. And, you could have been fired, like easily could have been fired. So I don't feel he made enough changes in the offseason. But like Shotgun said, I think there's some key changes that were made. And maybe, Pete Carroll was hired by USC. You can say it was luck, skill, whatever, but it was a great change and obviously worked. I think Graham Harrell is going to be a huge factor, and Aaron Ausmus has potential to be a huge factor. Should they have gone and got someone that they're unfamiliar with? Yeah, probably, but my gut feeling is that's going to work out. That hire is going to work. So I think he's changed the way he's done things, but we have to see how he handles this season. I think it's really important at the beginning of the season. We might watch some games and go, you know what, this is still the same team. It looked different going in, but when the cards were on the table, it's not going to be as good. So it's still kind of wait and see. But thanks for the call, Kevin. What do you guys? Chris, do you want to? We got some questions. I'll have to take a look at that. But do you want to talk about? So Chris has been putting up a lot of cool data from spring football, and what you've been working on the most recently, I guess, is the one-on-one battles. With the offensive defensive lineman, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
On my behest.
Right.
I kept trying to tell him to do it.
I was peer pressured into this by Shotgun and Keely a little bit.
Nice.
But basically what I did was, we have access to watching the one-on-one battles between the offensive line and defensive line, which is one of my favorite things to watch in any camp environment. But I basically tracked all the reps from every practice. Shotgun track some on days I weren't there, and Keely tracked some. So we have I think it was ended up being 10 or 13 practices because they didn't do them every day. But I basically tracked them, and I have the reps for every offensive line and defensive lineman, a scholarship defensive lineman or an offensive lineman, and I kind of worked out their win percentages of how well they did throughout the course of spring camp. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have specific questions or.
I mean, what you find most interesting from the data? What kind of surprised you, I guess?
Just from the offensive line side, I was kind of surprised by one of the things I was really interested in looking at is Liam Jimmons. Liam Jimmons was obviously a defensive lineman that got switched over to offensive tackle, offensive guard at the start of spring. So I was really interested to see how a guy with his type of athleticism was going to handle the switch right off the bat. And what I found was interesting that easily he finished with a 46% win percentage based off my data, which, you know, isn't great, but considering he was a defensive lineman like 3 months ago, that's pretty good. In his first 15 reps, he went 3 for 15, which is
Not very good.
It's not very good. But
20%.
in his final 15 reps, he went 11 for 15, which I thought, you know, he got some more reps with Jalen McKenzie got hurt at the tail end of spring, so he got some more reps at right tackle. So we got to see him go against some, you know, top defensive linemen, and I thought he did pretty well. It was cool to see him grow as an offensive lineman throughout this data.
I mean, obviously that's a huge difference because that's like 20% versus 78, I want to say, off the top of my head. So, I mean, that's a guy that you look at and you go, why is USC making this move? Because you see other guys that they've made the switches with, and it just has not worked out for any of those guys, really, recently. Ryan, can you think of anybody that, you know, they've switched from offense to defense and it's worked out really well?
Yeah, it doesn't usually, like, you got a Jacob Daniel who moved.
Jacob Daniel,
I mean, he didn't.
Dominic Davis.
Yeah, moving doesn't always work.
Didn't Jacob Daniel move back? No, who was the one? Jordan Simmons moving back
Jordan
and forth?
Simmons, yeah.
Didn't get to play at USC, starting in the
He's
NFL.
in the NFL. Like, that's usually not a good sign for what you're doing around USC. But we've seen that happen, and sometimes it's just the environment, sometimes whatever. You know, when people switch positions, they go to the NFL. But that's like a different coaching staff seeing something in the person, like, hey, we want them to be this. You know, like David Osbury, like, went from they tried to keep him as a wide receiver at USC. He was going to get too big, and then he goes, you know, to the NFL and becomes a tight end, and it works out better. But I mean, we see a lot of examples of that. But in a team, on the same team, when you switch positions, usually it's just like your stock is pretty low at the time, and it doesn't always work out. So, you know, a situation like Liam Jimmons, it's kind of interesting that, you know, he looked pretty good.
Yeah, and he's a guy that jumped into the spring showcase and was the starting tackle. Him and Frank
Yeah.
Martin, obviously there was some injuries and guys out, and he looked fine. And that's that was the one that definitely surprised me at how well he progressed throughout the season. I don't know if there's anybody on the defensive side that stood out for you, or another offensive lineman who kind of was the guy that you're like, that number doesn't seem right, and suddenly it was.
Just one more note of something that I thought was interesting is just the top 5 linemen on this list were your 5 starters.
I think that kind of goes with what we've said about there being a big drop off between the first team and second team.
So Jimmons was 6 on my list at 46%, and then the 5 was Jalen McKenzie at 68. So you see that jump there, 68 to 46.
Didn't realize it was that big of a jump.
Right. So 68 for Jalen, 68 for Brett, about 72 for 72. I like that. I thought that was okay. Austin Jackson, 73, and then your top guy was Elijah Vera Tucker, who has been outstanding in one-on-one since going back to last spring. He really jumped out to me 2 springs ago at the tail end, and he was almost, 74%. That was the highest mark we had, and there were times he was just dominating good defensive linemen. So I expected Elijah to be my number 1. Like 2 weeks into this, and I was like, and he came out on top, so that was interesting to see.
On the defensive side, the number 1 though, a little bit of surprise.
Yes. If people want to take a quick guess right now, we'll give you a second to take a quick guess. That includes outside linebackers too, because they're involved in this. It's not just down linemen, but the number 1 guy we had, and I know
my guess was Jay Tufele. I was incorrect because Jay Tufele ended up being 3rd, I believe.
Yes, and Jay Tufele was my pick too when I had all the data before I calculated. He was like, I have a feeling he's going to be number 1. But no, he came in at number 3. Number 1 was outside linebacker Abdul Malik McClain, the redshirt freshman coming out of J. Sarah, 4-star. He had a 62% win percentage in these drills.
Which is really good for a defensive lineman because you look at some of the other numbers. I think we said there were 4 guys that were above 50%. Obviously, if you're a defensive end, and you get to the quarterback 3 times and get 3 sacks, you're having a monster game.
Right.
Well, you're playing 60 snaps, so your win percentage doesn't have to be that great if you're getting there and making the sack. Obviously, you probably need 3 or 4 times at minimum, getting in the backfield before you're actually going to get that sack, just because quarterbacks roll out or whatever it may be. But that was a really good win percentage for him. And you see on the offensive side, the winners are at 75% versus 62%. So I think that shows you that offensive linemen are going to be, are usually going to win these drills more often. because the offensive line. It's easier to stop a guy than to get by a guy. I think in this drill in particular. So him at 62%, that's kind of eye popping. And that tells you that. That's a guy maybe we should be looking at more to potentially jump in the rotation and get some of those third down reps. He kind of took over that role for Hunter Echols at the very end of the season. He was the third down guy coming in those special packages. We'll see if he, if he can add to that, and if he can stop the run enough to where he's used on early downs as well. I think that I will be watching him definitely more after seeing these numbers.
Because I think Hunter kind of gets most of the spotlight for this offensive line or these. Outside linebacker, you think of Hunter first, and then Elijah Winston had a really good camp. He transformed his body, but not a lot of people were talking about Abdul Malik McClain until I kind of saw these numbers. Like, wow, that's really good. As we know, in high school, he was a really good pass rush specialist. I think he had like some ridiculous
16 or more
in the Trinity League. He led the Trinity League in sacks, which is really hard to do.
When you're going up against guys like Miles Morrell or the modern day offensive line that he went up against, all 5 of those guys are going to be 4-star or better guys, I think.
Because when I watch Echols in these drills, his big thing is his speed. He's so quick off the line. But the thing is, if a big offensive lineman gets hold of him, they can lock him up really easy. It's kind of hard to get away. But with Abdul Malik, he's a little bit thicker. He's a little bit bigger. He still has some of that speed, but he could be guys, with that speed rush. Or, if he got locked up, he had a little bit more strength where he can throw guys off. I saw him a couple times where he would lose the rep, but sometimes he shook the guy off at the very end. So he had some strength to go along with that speed, and I think that's what made him so successful in this drill. Other guys I was really surprised with was Marlon Tuipulotu. I get those guys mixed up all the time.
Yeah.
Who's known as a run stopper, being a big body in the middle of the line, not necessarily for his pass rush, which is a pass rush drill.
Yeah, and he had the best win streak of any of the big guys inside at 5. 5 was a pretty good win streak for, especially like we were just talking about. This is easy. It's better for the offensive lineman, and he went down the stretch. He won 10 of his last 13 reps, which was really impressive. And he also was the guy who snapped the win streaks of Andrew Voorhees and Brett Nealon during their impressive win streaks during camp. So
cool. That's not up yet on the site, right?
No, it is up on the site.
Okay, up on the site right now. It went up a few days ago then, right? Or is it?
It's been up for a little bit, but we're talking about it now.
Make sure you check it out on uscfootball.com. We got some questions. We got Mr. CD Proctor 84. He said, honest question for Inside Troy. Do you think JT Daniels was promised the starting quarterback position before enrolling early at USC? Clay made a commitment that changing the QB Clay made a comment that changing the QB was out of his hands last year. I don't remember him making that kind of a comment. That doesn't. Someone might have told you that or said that, but that's not a Clay Helton comment. No, I don't think. I mean, I think you talk a lot during recruiting. I don't think there was any sort of promise made. I mean, if you watched spring last year, neither Jack Sears or Matt Fink looked good at all, and they needed somebody to come in, and JT Daniels looked better. So, I mean, I know there's conspiracy theories out there, but we watched all the practices, and it was pretty clear who the best quarterback was. Any other thoughts, guys, or is that?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty simple. When you looked at it, and I talked about this in preseason last year, that Fink and Sears both had opportunities to push themselves above the other person, to put themselves in good standing before JT ever got there. And they would say, hey, you've got to beat this guy coming in. But instead, they were both equally not good, or just both equally mediocre, I would say, last spring. So that left the door wide open for JT, and it became, okay, whichever guy is the best in the fall, not JT needs to come in and he's got to beat this guy. It was, okay, JT's right in the mix and they're all even. Not JT was trailing somebody. And I think JT came in and he blew it away in the fall camp. We were all really impressed by what he did in the fall camp. Him and Amon-Ra St. Brown, that connection was evident immediately.
That Coliseum.
Coliseum practice where he had 3 touchdown passes, I think, or 4 touchdown passes, 3 to Amon-Ra St. Brown, I believe. And I think that he won the job in the fall for sure. So even if whatever he was promised or not promised, pretty much every recruit is kind of promised, hey, you'll get a shot at starting. They don't say, hey, you're our starter, but they might say, if Rashawn Gary's on your defensive line's weak like USC was when Rashawn Gary was coming in, they might say, hey, if you come, you're probably going to be our starter. You would be number 1 on our depth chart right now. That's the type of thing that you do in recruiting. Instead, they got Stevie Tuikolevatu, which worked out a little bit better for USC that year. But that's the type of thing you do in recruiting. I don't think anybody was like, JT's the quarterback, and we told him he would be the quarterback, so it doesn't matter what happens in fall camp. It doesn't matter what happens during the season. He's got to stay our quarterback. That's not how it works, guys.
No. We have a upset Facebook commenter. Let me put his
Sweet.
Yeah, Jim Copeland. He commented about 50 times in there. He's like, he wants to talk about Lane Kiffin. What about Kiffin year 3? That was part of the live call that we got. There was a 2-part question. It can't be a 2-part question if one part's about like mashed potatoes and another is about installing Windows. Like, that's not a 2-part question. Those are 2 separate questions.
Does that count as a food analogy?
I think it does. Yeah. Bam. Even as the host, I can come up with that.
It's a half.
Just because there's 2 parts of the. I mean, 2-part question usually has things that are related. Those things were not related. What his questions were, but Jim and people in the commenting on Facebook about Kiffin year 3 at FAU. Any thoughts, guys? I mean, it's not really a USC thing, but
the most I know about FAU since Kiffin has got there was that he's recruited some of the Last Chance U guys, and he was that was on the Last Chance U. That's basically it. I don't have time to watch an FAU game, guys, unless it's on a Thursday night or something. Then I might have a chance. No, actually, last year we were doing a live show on that was Thursday afternoon, but then I had to go work. So no, I'm not getting a chance to watch FAU. I'm basically at USC for 14 to 16 hours on Saturdays. I don't get to watch a ton of football. Maybe the very early games, but then I'm not picking the FAU game to watch. I'm watching the Michigan-Ohio State game at 12:30 or whatever it is before I come to the stadium. So sorry, I don't have a big FAU knowledge.
And Jim said, I think he's an advocate for Lane Kiffin coming back to USC. It seems like he said college football starts with recruiting. Kiffin is the elite recruiter USC needs to shut down the West Coast bleed. Will only get worse. So I guess he's wants to go back to USC did the Kiffin.
He also said Pat Hayden should have been fired on the LAX tarmac instead of Kiffin.
Yeah, okay.
Which is not necessarily incorrect.
That's not a bad take either.
Could be with Kiffin at the same time.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the direction you want to go. But speaking of replacing the head coach, just so people know, Clay Helton is still the head coach. I know there's all this talk about this. We had a tweet. This is from EDM80. How soon could Urban Meyer be named the next head coach at SC? Thanks for using the hashtag Tunnel Vision for your tweets. I mean, if you had to put up a Vegas poll, so Clay Helton's on the hot seat, right? So, like, if you any kind of that's legit. If it's a slow start, some people feel like it doesn't matter. He's not going to get fired. My opinion is if it's like a 2-4 start, he could be fired mid-season. But I think you just have no idea because the president's coming in on July 1st. They could make a change in the athletic department. I don't know. I don't think it's likely, but when you've had 3 people in the department arrested by the FBI, and questionable results in football, basketball, and baseball, like the big 3 sports, I think there's some issues there. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on with Donna Heinel, and she's being deposed. Lynn Swan's being deposed. It's kind of a mess in the athletic department right now. So you could see making a change there, but I mean, that's so far away. There's so many things that are going to happen between now and then. If USC was going to make a change, the easiest answer would be Urban Meyer. He's unemployed. He's in Los Angeles, doing the college football show and all that kind of stuff. But does he want to? Is his health okay? And we've not seen the USC administration go out and make the right hire in a long, long time. So I just think, I don't know. It's just hard to say at this point.
When would he get named? Well, there's not an opening right now, so that's the first thing.
Yeah.
That makes it more difficult. USC's not going to give up control that Urban Meyer will require. I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle if there becomes a job opening, is how much control will USC be willing to give up? Because Urban Meyer wants to control everything. It's just that's his nature. That's the way he goes about it. That's why he's a teacher at Ohio State, too, while he's there. He wants to control even the kids in the classroom. So I don't think that they're going to want to be willing to give up that control unless there's a new athletic director, unless there's, the power struggle within the athletic department has been going on for a while because there's been a vacuum. There's not I just think that everyone thinks that they deserve to be having a say when who actually should be having a say is a big question in that group. So I just don't think that the people that are in charge of making a decision like that are going to be willing enough to give up the power that it would take to get him to come.
Yeah. All right. We have a live caller, everyone.
Ooh,
so
late.
This is
late.
It's a Chris, not our Chris. It's a different Chris from Delaware, I believe. Chris, you're on with the Tunnel Vision crew. Thanks for calling in.
Hello, Mr. Abraham. Chris from Delaware, your absolute biggest fan. How is everybody tonight?
Doing great.
Yeah, can't complain.
Good. Ryan, congratulations on being picked up for another 6 weeks. The show is going fantastic, and I couldn't be happier. No Keely tonight, which is going to kill us with the teenage boy demographic.
Yes.
But, yes, I mean, 12 to 16-year-olds are not tuning in tonight. That's terrible. I absolutely love the show, as you know. A couple comments and then my question.
Okay.
The whole thing with Kiffin and the tarmac has been going on so long, and I am not a Clay Helton fan, so I think that when he does finally get fired, it should be actually in the air, the tarmac, in the air, 30,000 feet, give him a parachute, and he doesn't even deserve a tarmac. Just let him jump and let him go.
He's not willing.
Shotgun.
He's not like you don't even want him to land with the rest of the team. He needs to vacate.
No, I don't want him to be. No, I don't. No, absolutely. He does not land with the team. He does not deserve to land with the team.
That's harsh,
because
Chris.
what is he telling them on the way back? Some of you tackled way too strongly. What were you thinking? You could have torn, a pinky or something. I'm not into that. So no, he gets to jump.
Okay.
Shotgun, I am one of your biggest fans, but I got to tell you, you're coming off a little excusey tonight with this whole I don't watch FIU or CSI or whatever the hell you said. I don't know. If you don't know, Guy, what's going on with Vanderbilt or the University of Toledo, then you don't know college football. So I think you should just keep that in check. All right?
I can tell you about Vanderbilt. They always have to play the noon game in the SEC.
Yeah.
Well, then you don't have any excuses. Then you have no excuses. And I'm sorry I yelled. You know I love you. All right, here is my question. And I know it's a little off topic. And by the way, good evening, Mr. Trevino. Over the years, you guys have all I'm gonna give it a 5 years. 5 years. In the last 5 years, who was your favorite person to interview USC wise, player wise? Who came off the nicest? Who came off the most interesting? Or whatever. Who was somebody who was just an absolute joy? And I guess I will take my answer off the air.
Cool.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Chris from Delaware. Maybe he has
Thank
a
you.
corporation there or something that,
Well, I'm not at
low
liberty
taxes.
to discuss that, actually. Yeah, I'm not at liberty to discuss that. Why would you even bring that up?
I'm just saying.
Yeah, actually, this phone call is tax deductible.
Nice.
So, all right, guys, I love you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right,
Bye-bye.
see you, Chris.
Thanks for the call. My answer is easy to come to. Mine's Adoree Jackson. He's been my favorite player to cover. He's just such a nice guy. He's genuinely a good person. He's always smiling. He's always having fun. And he's been super great. With interviews, he's always willing to talk for 5-10 minutes when he while he was at USC. He's been great. He comes back to campus and he'll talk and remembers everybody. So Adoree Jackson's the easiest number one for me.
Who do you got, Chris?
Just a small note. I've been only on this beat for 3 years, so I can't go that extra 2 years back. But I would say Chris Hawkins.
Damn.
Stole your answer?
Stole my answer.
He was kind of similar to Adoree Jackson. He always gave great answers. A little bit easier to transcribe than Adoree's quick pace.
Yes.
But always insightful, always professional, funny. When he wanted to talk about an opposing player or defense, he gave you really in-depth stuff, and just a good guy. And glad he's back on the staff.
Yeah, it's good to see him back. I was going to put him too. I mean, you could put like a Zach Banner up there. He was a lot of fun to talk to. He would yell at you if you wore blue to the practice field and stuff. So he got a little antsy, ornery sometimes. I'm going to go outside of Chris's parameters. Classic back in the day. Lawrence Jackson was an absolute joy to interview all the time. He was, I think, the first video interview we ever did on the USC practice field. And he was a go-to guy all the time, just an all-star when it comes to that. We're going to try to get him coming up to an event. We're actually going to do an event. We'll put stuff up on uscfootball.com June 1st at Common Space Brewery in Hawthorne. So we're going to be there. I think Chris will be there. I don't think Shotgun's going to be there. He's got some stuff going on. But from 3 to 6, June 1st, it's a Saturday. So put that in your calendar. We'll put some stuff up there. But I think Lawrence is going to come out to that. We got Jake Olson coming out, former USC long snapper and stuff. That's cool. The other one, I didn't interview him as much because we did scrums, but Mark Sanchez would stay when we had Emily Nerlin and Michelle Phelan as our video reporters, like doing like kind of what Keely does now. They would go into the locker room and just knock out 20 freaking video interviews after a football game. And Mark Sanchez would always be like the last guy out and coming out of the shower and stuff. And he would sit down with them and chat for 5-10 minutes. I mean, it was crazy. He would do so many good interviews. So there's been a lot of people over the years, but more recently, I think the guys we mentioned are that.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the guy you golfed with. You mentioned him during a answer, but you didn't mention.
Oh, Jake Olson?
I mean, he's just such an inspiration. I
Yeah.
mean, being around him and seeing him snap in a game and all the stuff that he's gone through and his story over 10, 15 years now, it's just crazy. So it was a joy being able to cover him. I mean, he's not a guy that's on the field making a bunch of plays, but obviously an inspiration. Another guy that I really enjoyed are a couple guys, receivers, because I was a receiver in high school, so I love talking to receivers. But Brandon Carswell and Ronald Johnson. And Ronald Johnson will always stand out to me because after the Notre Dame rain game, when it rained at the Coliseum, he has a chance to catch a pass. It slips through his hands in the rain. He came out and talked with the media for, 5-10 minutes afterwards. And, that's not something that every player will do. It's tough to do. That's a rivalry game. Obviously, he's emotionally upset about it, but he came out and answered the media's questions, and I will always respect him for doing that and seeing a guy do that. So he was a guy that I loved talking to him before that, but I had even more appreciation for him after that.
Yeah, Bryce Butler back in the day, he was awesome too. And you talked about Dory, Juju when they were freshmen. And USC would lose games. Like those two were the guys talking all the time. Like so, they were sort of leaders as freshmen. So some good people. Good question from Chris. I think we got this is a Facebook from Lee Walker. Do you think USC will ever leave that dumpster fire called the Pac-12? They don't need to be there.
That's a Ryan Abraham question.
Yeah, no, I think you always need to like explore that. I think just looking at the opportunities that are out there. Maybe you could go an independent route and, get on NBC with the second game with Notre Dame or something. That could be interesting. USC, UCLA, like leaving and joining the Big 12. Just looking at the possibilities because I think the Pac-12 just takes USC for granted and they treat all the schools the same. Oregon State's the same as USC. That doesn't make any sense. If you're in the Big 12, Texas and Oklahoma get special treatment because they're Texas and Oklahoma. They bring it, they're the guys bringing in a lot of the revenue. And USC's bringing in the majority of the revenue and isn't getting the benefits. So I think you at least need to go out and look at it. But from what I've seen in the administration, I just don't see anyone that's, maybe Carol Folk can be that person that like, you don't necessarily want to leave all the tradition and stuff, but you explore it and look at it. And then you make Larry Scott or whoever's running the Pac-12 at the time go, yeah, we better keep USC around. You've been basically taking them for granted. So, good question, Lee. Chuck, did you have any?
We're ready for rapid fire yet?
Yeah, I think we're ready for rapid fire. I'll look for some other questions here, but let's put you go through some rapid fire ones.
Here you go, Chris. You ready for this?
Do I just sit back and let the master do his thing?
TM Used to Great asked, how is USC doing with the running back recruiting of Jawan Collins, Kendall Milton, and Bijan Robinson?
Oh, it's for me.
Yeah.
I thought it was for you. I mean, Kendall's kind of in the same boat as Flo. I guess he's taking all his national visits right now. Bijan.
I think that's how you say it. Bijan Robinson.
I would say UCLA is the SoCal leader for that guy. He really likes. Really good interview. Did you get to talk to him?
I have not talked to him.
Really great interview. I would say he likes USC, but I would say UCLA is the leader there. And then
Jawan Collins.
Looks like they're still recruiting him. I think he got that little graphic made up for him. So Narbonne kid. He's with Josh Jackson in USC. So get a little bit of a commit in his ear. So yeah.
And he's a guy that didn't have a great junior year. I mean, before his junior year, he actually told me he might shut it down his senior year and not play. I don't think that's going to be the case now. After didn't put up a ton of numbers this past year, they had another running back, blanking on the name off the top of my head, but also had pretty good numbers. So they have two running backs there, so he's not getting a ton of usage, which is good, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Which is good because then he's going to be fresh when he gets to college. But his skill set, they've seen it before. He's a guy they're going to recruit, and they're going to be at Narbonne a lot this year. There are a lot of kids at Narbonne right now.
Just set up a tent there and just camp out.
It might be like, all right, just you have a schedule. You have your regular calendar schedule, and you just write somebody's name for NARB on
Should we just
every
roll
day.
through the names real quickly?
If you want to bring them up, I mean, I can't think of all of them. Trayshawn Holden is a wide receiver with Josh Jackson. One more wide receiver, right?
Well, Darren Green Warren just transferred in, so we'll go there.
With you got Greenfield, Jared Greenfield is DB as well. You got Brandon Jones, who just committed to Stanford today.
Did have that USC offer, so
as well. A former LA Hawkins guy. He was there, cornerback. Jake Garcia, the 2021 quarterback, is their starting quarterback there. Obviously, Juwan Collins as the running back. They have another running
Jordan
back too.
Berry holds the USC offer.
Jordan Berry, the defensive tackle, who's committed to LSU currently. Another LA Hawkins former kid.
Jordan Banks, the outside linebacker, who holds the USC offer. There's a 2021 kid who just got offered. I can't remember.
Just a lot
So
of
there,
talent.
Yeah.
That's the
So part of rapid fire is not naming the entire Narbonne High School football roster.
I was taking
would
the
say.
shotgun route where he over answers.
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was.
I got a question for you from Charles East Hub Ford. How was Isaac Taylor Stewart this spring?
He did not push himself above anyone, so he's still going to be in competition. Similar to what I said about the quarterbacks, with Fink and Sears, no one in that cornerback grouping pushed themselves above, which gives a guy like Elijah Griffin a chance to come in and, hey, he's on an even playing field even though he didn't have the spring. So he's a guy that we kind of think will be pushing for one of those starting spots as well. But Isaac Taylor Stewart, Greg Johnson, the guys that were healthy, no one pushed above and had a strong enough spring to be named a starter already. There's still going to be a big competition in the fall.
Yeah. We also had a Twitter question. Don't try to, if you make the Twitter questions too long, we can't really read the whole thing, but do you think it will be a true, quote, open competition for the quarterback spot? And if Jack beats out JT, will, and then it just kind of goes blank. But so what do you think about open quarterback? That's from @MileHighTrojan.
Chris, I'll let you get this one.
Is it open?
I feel like you guys have answered this question every week.
We might have.
There's different viewers every week.
Yes, I think we've seen an open competition this spring, and I think that's going to continue, even though the quarterback room's a little bit smaller. I think right now it's mainly just JT and Jack Sears fighting for that, and you got Keaton, who's playing at a really high level, and is going to push them for a little extra competition in the back.
The end of that question was, and if Jack beats out JT, will the players follow him?
Oh, yeah, I think the players would follow Jack Sears. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if someone proves themselves and beats out an incumbent, then I think the team's going to be behind them, because it takes more to beat out someone who's already the starter than it does when there's just an open competition.
Yeah, and if he wins, I think if Jack Sears wins, it's not like, he would be the winner. He would be the better quarterback, and players know that. As long as they name the right guy, players know who was better in practice and who's better to lead the team. So I think if the players really feel that Jack Sears won and the coaches name him starter, I think they'll be on board. Jasper
asked that the key is recruiting. The last couple of O-line classes have been guys who seem to be project guys and need 3 years to develop just to start making a contribution. That was more of a statement than a question, but looking at it, are there guys in this offensive line class that they're recruiting that could be immediate play guys that can come in immediately and play?
Like an Austin Jackson kind of guy.
Yeah, who was able to come in. Andrew Voorhees also came in. He was a 3-star guy, but he played as a freshman.
Yeah, he was someone you thought would be a project and was playing right away.
But some of the other guys they've had, with Brett Nealon and Justin Dedich, and those guys are all guys that were going to, have to sit and redshirt at least a year. Do you see anybody in this class they're recruiting currently that could be an immediate come in and play right away type of guy?
Not the 2019, or you mean the
2020 class that they're still recruiting?
I think there's a couple of offensive tackles that they're. I really like Tosh Baker. I know he just
today
literally committed to Notre Dame. The big, massive 6'8" guy out of Arizona.
Yeah.
They're recruiting some big offensive tackles. 6'7", 6'8". Noah Nelson out of Arizona. I know he's kind of a Michigan lean right now, but there's a lot of big tackles that could come in, and I know Dregno really wants to get his hands on one of those. They need some tackle help. They need to rebuild that depth there. So I would say, Noah Nelson. I like Noah Nelson. I think Andrew Gentry out of Colorado. He's a big 6'7" guy. I think he could also be a day one impact guy to help out.
I think you got to look at the triple M's, the local triple M. Miles Monroe, I think if he were to come in and play center, as has been, what he said Drevno told him previously, that's a guy that could potentially come in and start right away. Drake Metcalf is another guy locally that USC that it was nasty enough to come in, but he would have to be an interior guy, so that'd be a position of need if possible. And then Jonah Monheim is a guy who's more of the project, but I think those 3 M's, the 3 local M's, are going to be crucial to this offensive line class and where it goes, and whether or not they add the depth they're looking for, because they haven't really done that in the last couple of years. The offensive line is a little bit thin compared to where it had been. So, and if you want to even look at the 2019 class, you think there's anybody in this group that comes in and competes immediately? Jason Rodriguez?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Jason. I think he could compete. Given the the drop off between the first and the second, I think he could definitely come in and win a backup tackle job, depending how well he does in the fall. I mean, that's a big jump for a high school offensive lineman jumping into college, but he's got all those physical characteristics. He's 300 plus, 6'6", nasty. So I think he could be a guy that could see the 2 deep.
He's going to need a lot of technique work. I've seen him at the Polynesian Bowl. That was the area that's lacking. Like you said, he has the physical attributes, and his father has told us he's getting stronger. So I look for him to see how quickly he develops, technique-wise during fall camp, especially to determine whether or not he's a guy that maybe you see in 4 games in red shirts, or whether he's a guy that if you have an injury, you can push him in there sooner than that.
All right, I got one more Facebook one from Mike. Which program would you most want to see SD play a home-and-home series with? I think I know Shotgun's answer.
Yeah, Georgia for sure.
Georgia.
Florida State would be another one that'd be fun, or Miami. I've never been to Miami, so.
Yeah, Chris would probably say Maryland. Yeah.
Maybe.
I've been to Florida State, so USC played a home-and-home with Florida State in my lifetime. I think Florida would be an interesting one.
Except they never go outside of the state of Florida to play non-conference games.
Miami would be interesting. I mean, they played Alabama, so that's like,
It's not a true home and home.
No, it wasn't home and home. I mean, yeah, that would be kind of cool to do a home and home with Alabama or Clemson. That's kind of a tough place to get to. Even like a Michigan, I think would be pretty interesting.
Be fun one, yeah. Or Ohio State again.
Tennessee.
I wasn't able to go for that.
Yeah, I went to the Ohio State game, so and that's something I've seen, but which was kind of the horseshoe was awesome to go. See again. I mean, going to Texas was great. Like Oklahoma would be awesome too.
LSU, I would love.
Yeah,
to see
that would be pretty
Baton
badass.
Rouge.
Yeah, that's probably.
So
I think that would
be in
trump,
my top 3. Yeah.
That would probably trump most of the SEC ones. Just see it, especially with Orgeron there. Like,
oh yeah,
come
definitely.
on.
LSU, Georgia, and Miami are my 3.
If you could do that like this year, like Clay Helton versus Orgeron, that would be explode. It would be amazing. Thanks, Mike, for that question.
Do you guys think that Greg Burns fixed the DBs from falling or running into each other all the time, or are they at least hanging with receivers consistently? SNS product, I guess is how you would say it.
I mean, that was really we didn't get to fully gauge that.
Yeah,
so few bodies. Yeah,
you had walk-on starting, so
I could have been out there and you guys wouldn't have noticed.
You got some good foot speed, I bet you, Chris.
Only if we do only if we do like the red zone one where it's like they're off the 2-yard line and I don't have to run as much. That one I feel like
you don't have to worry about like running 40 yards down the field.
No. Yeah, I could hang with Pitt. Just let me go up there and bring it down.
Just body him a little bit. Yeah.
The DBs weren't really the ones that were running into each other. That was more of the wide receivers last year on a couple routes. But I think that the DBs are taking steps going forward. I think they're working on a lot of technique that didn't necessarily see the same style of technique being taught last year. So, but I think that's a wait and see position because there was only 5 guys out there, and it's hard to tell when Talanoa Hufanga gets hurt and Isaiah Polomau can't have contact, Greg Johnson can't have contact.
Max Williams is still rehabbing.
So I think that's definitely a wait and see case there. I think Greg Burns has done some really good things on the recruiting side. We'll see how the product on the field produces and how it progresses as we go forward.
We got one more on Facebook from Maria. If Jack Sears is selected, would JT consider transferring? There's always transfer talk, but
yeah, I think if either quarterback, I think JT would. If you're looking at those 2 guys, if JT is named the quarterback, Jack Sears probably not transferring because he finishes his degree, he can leave after next year.
Yeah.
The other way around, I think JT would be considering transferring much sooner than Jack Sears, if that's the way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Just because he doesn't have the option to finish the year and then transfer if he's got all his work done. Whereas Jack Sears, if he's done all his academics, then he will be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mr. C.D. Proctor said, any chance Dominic Davis gets a chance on offense? Chance twice in that sentence. Would love to see him in the slot or out of the backfield. He's a weapon which hasn't been utilized in 3 years. That is true. He is a weapon that has not been utilized. However, just don't see it happening. Particularly with the dearth of DBs and cornerbacks, and he actually had a pretty good spring. He didn't start the spring. He was injured, but once he got in there, he had a pretty strong spring. I thought. Especially he was as impressive of any other cornerback out there. He did a really nice job on Michael Pittman. That's who he was matched up with a lot. But so going up against a bigger receiver, the question will become how much do they trust him, and do they find a spot for him out on the field? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's hard to tell.
He just seems too talented to not be contributing somewhere, So you'd like to see him somewhere.
If they use the style of offense that Washington was bringing down with Sark, I think he would have been utilized more often. He was used a lot for a freshman running back of his size his freshman year. So, but I think that just the change in offensive philosophies and that Helton was not having the same type of offense as Sark was, I think really hurt him. Very important question from SNS. Is it possible that Stephen Carr's confidence is gone because of always getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage? Chris, what do you think?
No.
Stephen Carr doesn't seem like a guy. He's not a confidence-losing type of guy. I think he's pretty sure of himself.
Go look at his Twitter. He's subtweeting everyone and anyone. He's ready. He's ready to have some people eat some crow this year.
Which maybe that means that he feels he's back to 100%, which would be good for USC football there.
Yeah.
You need cocky Stephen Carr.
Oh, yeah. And he's a guy that in this offense could do a lot of damage because they'll use the running backs out of the backfield, and he has great hands. They can split him out. They can do some different things with him. Michael Ford asked, Ryan.
Oh, me.
I saw you did a podcast about linebackers being a position of strength. How did EA, Pali EA Naitiote, do during spring ball?
I did. It wasn't a podcast. It was like a video. But they asked me, and I think they asked me where the best depth is at, and I said linebacker. Couple reasons. One, we're not sure how many linebackers are actually going to be out in the field. They might only have. There's only like 2 linebackers out there. They got plenty of dudes to kind of fill that spot. With the outside linebackers, you're not really sure if they're going to use more like defensive end type of guys. But there's just a lot of bodies there. You got some senior leadership. Jordan Iosefa and John Houston. But EA, I thought, did a good job. Now, we thought we were going to see him in the middle, and then he moves to the will. You just have to get that guy out there. He's one of the surest tacklers, I think, on the squad. So, moving it was a little strange at first, but as long as he's out there, I don't have an issue. It was weird, like in the middle, where you're moving like John Houston and Jordan Iosefa around a little bit. But, I think he's going to be an absolute stud this year. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I thought EA is going to be a monster.
Yeah. He's going to be like the best tackler probably, right?
And he's going to blow some guys up, and hopefully he doesn't blow anyone up and himself up at the same time like he did with Laviska Shenault. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But he's a missile. His anticipation is great. His first step is incredible. He diagnoses stuff well. But not, he diagnoses it good, but not great. That's going to be the area that will determine how strong of a season he can have. Clancy Pendergast, that was part of the reason why he didn't get more run is because he would sometimes diagnose incorrectly, get out of his gap, and then suddenly Arizona State has a big run. Pallier even talked about it that, he said he's brought up the Arizona State game this spring as learning experience, he still remembers it. Let's put it that way. He still remembers that Arizona State game because he feels like he cost the team. And he did. He was out of position in some of them, and that led to some of those long runs. But he's a guy that's going to make plays for USC, and if you get him a little freedom and just let him go, and, man, he could do some really nice things for the Trojans.
Yeah.
Did you agree with me naming him USC's #1 draft prospect on my list?
So #1, like on the team, you said he'd be the #1 pick.
No. He's just out of all of USC's draft prospects, he has the chance to be the highest of everyone.
All right.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
I think so.
He was my #1. I made that list.
I think he could go in the first round. If he cleans up a couple things, I think he has all the potential. He's fast enough. He's physical. He does everything really. He can do everything really well. Will he do it all well? That's the question.
Yeah.
I got a couple more here.
Let's finish up.
Christian, I think it's safe to say that this would be the most talented team to run the air raid-esque style offense. Do you think recruits care about that, or does winning outweigh everything? I think, if they look at the offense and say, wow, look what that's doing with these high skill players. I could fit in there too. I could be the next guy to do. Yeah, I think that works. Winning will be a part of that. If the offense is going really well, they're not going to be losing.
Yeah.
I mean, the defense will do enough that it's not going to be like they're putting up 50 points a game and going 3-9. That ain't happening.
No.
Any other comment? No. Okay. Will all the scandals around USC, would they really hire Urban, known for his past? That's part of it too. I don't think that'll happen. But Wallace, I had to ask that question because Wallace followed up with, "What about Hugh Freeze as head coach? We all have a past. He made some calls on the school phone that was not appropriate." Exclamation point.
Okay. No.
USC's not wading into those waters.
That's, Urban Meyer has not like ever got in trouble at the NCAA or anything like that. There were some questionable moral decisions. But this is not Hugh Freeze territory. Holy cow. No, you cannot go there. And there's Urban Meyer win national championship at 2 different schools. Hugh Freeze beat Alabama a couple times. There's no, it's not worth the risk reward. You could make an argument for the risk reward being in a positive as far as the reward goes for Urban Meyer. I don't think you could do that with Hugh Freeze.
Someone want to know who would win a game of tetherball between me and Ryan. Chris, I guess you have to answer that.
Can I be the ref? And I would. I mean, Ryan hangs out at the beach a lot. I feel like maybe he's like a competitive tetherball player in his spare time we don't know about. Shotgun, we moved together. I'm sorry, you got a little winded a couple times. So.
I'm back trying to exercise now, but I'm going to give that one to Ryan.
Right.
You can win tetherball.
Ryan was ready. He was just.
I'm in better shape than him.
Right. I would say.
But I would 6 months ago I wouldn't have been. So.
But peak physique, Shotgun
Oh yeah, I'm definitely taking.
Well, he's younger. he's younger.
Okay, both of you in your peaks.
I'm still taking that. MC also asked,
I don't know.
will the Fighting Finks win more games at Illinois than USC will?
No.
Yeah, I don't.
Lovie Smith is the head coach. I know you don't like Clay Helton,
wow.
but it's Lovie Smith.
I think that's about it. There was some chatter in YouTube about bringing back Jack Jones, that they need to do that, and that's not going to happen.
Wasn't he randomly at the spring showcase?
He was. It was at the spring showcase.
He did go up that. We had a Facebook comment. Brian says, "Wish we had a DT inside push like Clemson did last year." Yeah, I think most people would. How many? They had 14 defensive linemen drafted. So that's
all in the
good.
first round too.
Yes.
14 in the first round.
I mean, that's a record. I thought it was a record. Maybe it's not, but I mean, it seemed like it would have been.
Yeah, they had a tremendous defensive line, and that was what helped win the championship for them because Alabama couldn't do a lot of things up front that they wanted to do. That's the type of defenses USC used to have. Their defensive line was consistently producing NFL talent.
Yeah.
With the Cedric Ellises and Lawrence Jackson, those type of guys. Sean Cody, obviously. So that's what USC has to get back to. Now, we think that Marlon Tuipulotu and Jay Tufele are very talented and potential NFL players. But can they progress in their career enough to where they're dominating versus – hey, maybe they sign on and, or they're a 5th or 6th or 7th round draft pick versus working their way up and being 1st and 2nd round draft picks.
Yeah.
One mock had Tufele at number 12 overall.
Yeah, that mock was out of control. I saw that mock. It was out of control.
Wow. Yeah.
It had JT Daniels going number 1 or number 2 as well,
Yeah.
I think.
I hate mock drafts.
I think that was a user submitted mock too. I just want to point that out.
From a USC fan, I think. That was one of those blogs or something did that. All right. Well, hey, great show. Sorry again. No Keely. We'll have her back again next week. Thanks for everyone. I think we went streaming on Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. Seemed to go off without hitch. We tried to get a bunch of your questions in. I'm sorry if I didn't get as many as Keely. There's a lot of stuff to run here when you're running the show. I'm usually just sitting over there chatting and checking out some comments. But thanks for the live calls. And thanks for Chris Trevino for coming in and filling in. I know this isn't your favorite thing to do, so thank you for coming and doing that.
I'm here so I don't get fined. Okay.
Yeah. And Shotgun, thanks for coming in and being your colorful self.
I'm always trying to be colorful.
Yeah, it's all stuff.
It's
But
pink, guys.
Yeah.
Even though I see the camera, it's not showing up pink on the camera, but it is pink.
yeah, it looks red and on the camera, but I'm looking at you now because he's looking to the side of me, and it definitely looks more pinky. All right. Well, that's Chris, Shotgun, Ryan. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back again next week. Don't forget, June 1st, we got a cool event coming up at Common Space Brewery. I'll put more information up on uscfootball.com. But thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.